Last time I played Prism in Classic Constructed, I went 1 and 2. Can I do better with some modifications? Let's take a look. Hi friends, welcome back to Nearly Same Games. I'm Neil, and this is the Armory Report. This week's Armory event, Classic Constructed. And I decided to take Prism out for another run. Let's take a look at the deck.
All right, let's have a look at this Classic Constructed deck. Let's start with our hero, Prism, and let's look at our equipment. We've got Dreamweavers. This is going to be important if we need to have our Phantasms go through. This is our default equipment. Luminaris, our default weapon. This gives all of our things a go again. This is really essential. Halo of Illumination. In a pinch, we can shuffle out a card and see if we get something else. We have one piece of Null Rune that's going to be on our arms. We have a Goliath Gauntlet for those games that we need to go a little bit bigger. We also have, of course, the Phantasmal Footsteps. This is pretty much a requirement. We're going to be throwing heralds and they're going to get popped. We're going to need to revive that action point. This also allows us to block for one if we pay one. These are good for Kodachis or in the mirror match when we're fighting against those spectral shields. We also want Vestige of Soul. This will allow us to, when we get cards in our soul, be able to get extra resources. This is great for those turns that we want to use Tome to draw a bunch of cards. All right, now we're going to start in with our auras. Arclight Sentinel, this will block an attack. We'll run 3 of those. This is very important. It's especially good for those go tall decks that really want one big punch per turn. Genesis, excellent card all around. We get to put a card from our hand at the beginning of our turn, put a card from our hand into our soul. If it's Illusionist, we create a Spectral Shield. If it's a light card, we draw a card. This does all the things we want it to. Nice little target to distract our opponents as well. Merciful Retribution. This is probably one of the best auras, aside from Genesis, I guess. But every time an aura or an attack action card is destroyed, it goes into your soul, and you throw an arcane damage at your opponent. Very good. Celestial Cataclysm. Not necessarily that we're going to... In situations, we can use this to attack with, but a lot of times we're just not going to have the soul for this. But it is still a good blocker, and it is great in the mirror matches because it's a 7 block that can pop heralds. And then we get to our heralds. Herald of Erudition. Excellent card. Dominate. If it hits, we draw 2. Very good for us. Herald of Rebirth allows us to put a card from our graveyard on top of our deck. Great fuel. We'll have all the blues of that. Herald of Ravages. I'm running the yellows and the blues of this. Good herald. If it hits, deals an arcane damage. People want to tend to block this, so I like this a lot. Wartoon Herald, our 1-cost herald, also with a lot of power. 5s for the blues, 6 for the yellows. Another great card to have. We can potentially throw 2 heralds using this and a blue pitch. Herald of Protection, one of my favorite heralds. If this hits, we get a Spectral Shield and it goes into our soul. Does a lot of things we want to do. We're running the yellows and the blues here. Herald of Triumph makes our opponent's attacks have 1 less power. It's okay, but another blue herald for more fuel. Then we're running the tomes. Again, if we can get card in our soul, get Vestige of Soul online, we can pitch a blue and be able to draw 3 cards. It's really nice. Prismatic Shields. We're running the reds and the yellows. We're looking to close out the game with Prismatic Shields with all of these little 1-point attacks, like many Kodachis. Very difficult to block. Phantasmaclasm. Excellent card to have to disrupt our opponent. I'm more interested in this disruption than the 9 power, although the 9 power is a nice bonus. But the idea that you can put this down, take a card from their hand and put it on the bottom, that's the important part. That's what you're looking to do. And you're looking to pick their most impactful card if you can't get a 6 power card out of their hand. I was using this to great effect against the Guardians I was playing. They would show a hand full of reds and 1 blue, and I would pitch that blue on the bottom, give you more disruption. Sink Belows. Only running the reds here, but this is a good card to have to be able to put one of our non-blocks on the bottom of our deck and potentially get another blocking card, or potentially get a blue if we need a blue. Great all-around card. Energy Potion. I'm running 2 of these. It's nice to be able to send all of our spectral shields over, and we still have that action point. You can drop an energy potion, and it's there for us in a pinch. Unmovable. 1 yellow in the main. This kind of goes in with as our 3rd card for energy potion. I like to have 1 around in the main deck, even against classes that aren't necessarily go tall. There's usually at least 1 pretty tall attack, and unmovable can be good for that. And then Soul Shield, another great defensive reaction, 6 power or 6 block, and it goes into our soul. It does what we want it to do, only costs 2. Then we go look at our sideboard. Raging Onslaught. For Prism, this is a 7 power Herald blocker. This is also good for those matchups like Guardian, where we want to have some bigger attacks that we can throw at them that are not going to get popped as a Herald. Got 2 more unmovables on the side. Again, when we get those big, go tall matchups that are not going to have things like Heart of Ice, then having extra defensive reactions is pretty good for us. Herald of Judgment. So this can come in if we need to get rid of our defensive reactions. If we're playing against Alexi with Heart of Ice, we want to try to pull out as many defensive reactions as we can. And this is a 3 blocker for those. This is also very good against Chain. Can turn off being able to play cards from their Banish Zone. Potentially we get a hit from whatever they have in there for their Blood Debt. Enigma Chimera. This is one of my ads that is just a beater. Yellow attacks for 7, still blocks for 3. Again, this is a card I wanted to bring in case we're running against a Heart of Ice. I want to get rid of my defensive reactions and have more blocks available to me, and if those blocks can also attack, then that will be good for us as well. And then a couple of more Herald of Rebirth. Again, I want to have the ability to dump all of my defensive reactions and have decent cards in their place that block 3. All right, let's take a look and see how I did with this deck.
Now with this deck, I was looking to try to shore up some of my weaknesses that I had last time. First off, I wanted to get rid of some defense reactions. I got rid of all the yellow Sink Belows. Second off, I wanted to have my sideboard be adaptive to what I had in the match. If I needed to be more aggressive and pull out some auras, I wanted to have attacks in there so that I can use those. If I was playing against a Heart of Ice, I wanted to pull out my defensive reactions and have enough cards in my sideboard that were attacks that could replace all of those and still be able to block and be able to return an attack with that. So that's kind of the focus around what I was doing with this deck. And I was hoping to shore up my matches against Lexi and Chain in particular, and wanted to make sure that those matches I had a better chance at. So let's see how I did this week. My first round was against an Oldhim, and this was, I brought in my unmovables and my 3 Raging Onslaughts. I wanted to make sure I had extra block available to me and for the big Guardian attacks, and I wanted to have something that wasn't going to get popped every turn. And I took out the 3 yellow prismatic shields. I don't expect my auras to be as easy to protect, and I took out 2 Herald of Ravages just to take out something out of there. Now, Phantasmaclasm turned out to be very good for me. There are a lot of Guardian hands that will include 1 big attack and a bunch of blues that aren't big enough to pop my my heralds. So I was able to get him once with that, put him in an awkward situation, make him have a big block. A lot of times that leaves Guardian with Seismic Surge and Pass. He was also running the Sledge of Anvilheim, so he needed at least 4 resources to attack with. So that went well. Arclight Sentinel is excellent in this match. There were a lot of times that he would begin a setup, play some kind of buff to his attack, and in that phase, in response to him playing that buff, you drop an Arclight Sentinel. That's all he can do. And so that essentially negates his buffs. Very good. He did play a Channel Lake Frigid on me, and that is a really rough card. And when that happened, I kind of just switched into defense mode. I just wanted to block a lot, hopefully not have to pay for my defense reactions, but if I did, that's the thing I had to do. And I just basically went into blocking mode until I could get that off of the field. I think if he had several of those in a row, it would have been very, very detrimental to me. He did manage to keep it out for at least 2 turns, but I was able to survive his attacks. I did have a lot of block available to me, and thankfully not too many defense reactions. Although I didn't really take any out there. I figure with Oldhim, even if he has Heart of Ice, having those big defensive reactions, he's usually only going to swing 1 giant swing at you every turn. I think I'll pay for those defense reactions and see what we can do with that. And then it was a matter of getting the Spectral Shields and the auras to do a lot of work for me. They're really hard to block, especially if you get multiple of them. I was able to get out 5 at one time between Spectral Shields and auras, and so I'm swinging 5 1-point attacks, which is very difficult to do. Really brought down his life. At the end, he was at 1 life. I was still at 20, and I was able to use a tome and draw into a hand that I was able to throw 3 heralds at him, plus I had a Spectral Shield at the end, and that was enough to kill him. My second round was against a Bravo, so this is kind of going Guardian for me tonight. And so I kept the same lineup, just Guardian setup. I was less concerned about Frostbite tokens because it's just Bravo. And this was very much a very grindy match. This was a lot of blocking his big attacks, taking some turns off. Because of that, I would get Spectral Shields for a little bit, be able to swing a couple of them, and then he would come back and smack me again, and I would lose them again. So there was a lot of back and forth, and it's a matter of getting those Spectral Shields back in order to swing those little hits. Those little hits are the ones that get through. They're not blocked, and In the end, I was fatigued. I was down to um, a Genesis and 2 tomes in my hand, and I was able to swing 4 auras at him and able to tick off his last point of health. He was at 1, I was still at 8. But I was definitely fatigued. There was a lot of problems. So my third round was a mirror match against Prism. And this was a pretty brutal match. A lot of back and forth. He was playing more of a hybrid and probably leaning more towards Heralds. He was running a lot of red Heralds in his deck. This was a little problematic for me. A lot of 7 attack Heralds means that how am I going to defend against that? I still left the same configuration as I was playing against Guardians. I wanted to have, again, the Raging Onslaughts for popping the Heralds and the unmovables to potentially block out a Herald, especially if I could get it in an arsenal, then it blocks for 7. He was also running pummels, which I had to be aware of and had to decide exactly if he was holding 2 cards or if he had 2 resources up and a card in arsenal. Had to decide how I was going to deal with that. And sometimes I had the unmovable in hand and I was ready to block it out. Other times I was just looking for what I needed to do if that pummel came through. And if I lost another card from my hand, what would my turn be with that? And always considering that pummel. Sometimes I'd have an Arclight Sentinel, and in response to the pummel, I'd drop out the Arclight Sentinel. I know I had an Arclight in my arsenal one time when he was sending over Command and Conquer, and I didn't really want to let the Command and Conquer. I didn't really care about if the Command and Conquer hit, but I'd lose my Arclight Sentinel out of the arsenal, so I decided to play it in response to that, and I was able to just take the hit and still have a card in my hand. Plus I had Arclight Sentinel out, which I can swing because it is an aura. And the Celestial Cataclysms and Raging Onslaughts were very good for popping Heralds. Again, he's running more red Heralds, so I was able to get those at the right times to kind of pop those and be ready for the next attack. Unfortunately, he's playing more of a Herald's build, so he would refresh his resource point and swing another Herald usually at me. But a lot of times those came back through as the second one would come through as a blue Herald, and it was easier to block and deal with. So he also had the Raging Onslaughts, the Celestial Cataclysms, so he was popping my Heralds. I didn't care quite as much. A lot of times my Heralds were something to do to get a yellow pitch in the bin, and then I could pay to refresh my resource points and then swing my auras at him. He was very good at destroying my auras, except for one round that he let me keep a Genesis, 1 round longer than he should have. And I messed up one of his as well. I swung at him and with 4 shields, and he had an aura that I should have been attacking, and it went very poorly for me. At the end, it was pretty tight at the end. He was down to 1 life, I was down to 11 life, but I was also just about fatigued. So I had a few cards left in my deck, and he's at 1 life, so he's blocking everything I throw at him. I had 11, I had something to work with, although I had some Spectral Shields. I couldn't lose those. If I lost all of those, then I'd have nothing to attack back with, and I'd be fatigued, and I would lose, definitely. And I managed to... I had an awkward hand. Like my last few cards were kind of awkward to begin with. They didn't block. I think I had 2 Genesis in there. I had 2 Tomes in there. And maybe 1 Energy Potion. And I was able to, I had a Spectral Shield available to me, and I was able to drop a Genesis. And I had 1 Genesis left in hand, so I was able to, at the beginning of my turn, put that Genesis in my soul. I got a Spectral Shield, and I was able to draw a card. That card was a Yellow Pitch. I was able to play the Yellow Pitch and create a Spectral Shield with the Genesis I put in my soul and be able to swing for 4, which he was able to block out. But used all of his cards, so just needed to get there. So I drew my last 3 cards, and I thought I'm stuck here. But so I had an Energy Potion and 2 Tomes. So how am I going to get there with this? Well, with Genesis, I'm able to put my Energy Potion into my soul and use 1 of my Tomes to spit out another Spectral Shield. Have 5 attacks now, and that was able to get through his defenses. Totally fatigued. I had 1 more turn that I could potentially do that again, and that was going to be it. But in the end, I'm able to come over with a lot of little hits that are difficult to block. And that was it for this this Armory event. I went 3-0 with this Prism deck. I think that I like where it sits right now. I would have liked to have played against the Lexi. I'm still scared of Heart of Ice and how I'm able to defend against that, how I'm able to deal with all of the Frostbite tokens that you could potentially get from that. But I feel like this iteration of this deck played very well, and I was able to get where I wanted to go with the hands that I had. I also had a lot of very good hands, and I wasn't upset that I got an all yellow hand or too many reds in my hand. I don't have a lot of reds in the deck, so the deck really played very well, and I was very happy with that. And yeah, 3-0 is pretty good. So I'm quite happy with that. We'll probably try this again, and we'll see how it goes. Next week will be next week is Commoner, and we'll see how we do with that. Probably running Prism again in Commoner. That deck was so powerful. I don't know. Maybe I'll think of a new deck to play. We'll see. But until then, I'm Neil, and this has been the Armory Report.